Airports are theaters for countless untold tragedies, but this story brought the entire terminal to a standstill. A collective gasp echoed through the hall as parents instinctively gathered their children closer. Security agents scrambled toward the commotion. The constant drone of boarding calls fell silent as a highly trained K-9 officer suddenly lunged at a small, paralyzed girl, barking with a desperate urgency, a low growl rumbling in its chest, refusing to yield. In mere moments, a perimeter of security formed, their faces etched with confusion and alarm, completely baffled by what the animal had detected. The K-9 handler fought against the taut leash, but the German Shepherd was an immovable force. His gaze locked intensely on the little girl's trembling hands, which were desperately clutching a worn leather satchel. A heart-wrenching cry escaped the child as tears streamed down her face. Paralyzed from the waist down, her voice was a fragile whisper. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Is that dog attacking her? Is she carrying something she shouldn't be? No one knew the truth. The scene was a vortex of chaos and uncertainty. In the beginning, everyone assumed it was a tragic mistake that the dog was wrong, but they couldn't have been more mistaken. This was no error in judgment. This heroic K-9 was trying to unmask something truly sinister, a massive criminal ring preying on disabled children, and this innocent little girl was about to become their next victim. What the authorities uncovered next would leave the entire airport in stunned silence. Before we continue, please make sure to show your support by liking and subscribing. And I'm truly curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Let me know your country in the comments below. It's incredible to see how far these stories reach. That morning, the airport was a symphony of controlled chaos, the rhythmic click of rolling luggage on polished floors, the disembodied voice of announcements overhead, and the frantic energy of families hurrying to their gates. But beneath that surface-level noise, the atmosphere began to change. A shift so subtle that only one soul noticed it, a lone German shepherd. Officer Daniel Carter patrolled with his loyal K-9 partner Rex on a routine sweep near Terminal C. All morning, Rex had been the picture of calm professionalism, alert, steady trotting by Daniel's side with unwavering discipline. Then, in an instant, something broke his composure. His ears pricked straight up. His head snapped with sudden intensity toward the main check-in counter. His powerful body went rigid, coiled like a loaded spring. Daniel slowed his pace. "Rex, what is it, boy?" But there was no bark in response. Not yet. He took one deliberate step, then another, and then he lunged. The leash went taut with such force it nearly yanked Daniel's arm from its socket. "Rex, easy," Daniel commanded through gritted teeth, struggling for control. But the dog was deaf to his words. In all their years together, Rex had never acted this way unless the danger was real and immediate. Travelers froze in their tracks. A few people gasped in shock. Others simply stared, their eyes wide with uncertainty. And at the epicenter of Rex's unwavering focus sat a little girl no older than 7, huddled in her wheelchair. A curtain of brown hair hid her face, and her small pink shoes dangled just inches from the ground. Silent, unending tears traced paths down her pale cheeks. Her small hands trembled as she clutched a worn leather bag to her lap like a shield. Rex let out a single sharp bark, loud and authoritative. The entire terminal fell into a stunned hush. It wasn't a sound of aggression. It was an alarm, a desperate plea for help. Onlookers instinctively took a step back from the child. Whispers spread. "Is she all right?" Others murmured anxiously, "What's in that bag?" Airport personnel exchanged uneasy, questioning glances. The air grew thick with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. Rex was never, ever wrong. He never barked without a profound reason. And yet, why this child? Why someone so fragile, so terrified? Rex began to circle, a low growl rumbling in his chest, his gaze fixated on the bag, as if sensing a hidden threat. The little girl let out a soft whimper, squeezing her eyes tight. Her small legs hung utterly still, limp, and seemingly lifeless, a portrait of pure helplessness. A mother pulled her child close, whispering, "Oh my God, what's happening?" Daniel's throat went dry as he moved to stand between the crowd and his dog. "Everyone please stay back," he commanded, trying to control the scene. "We'll handle this." But a cold uncertainty gripped him. He had no idea what this was. Rex surged forward once more, his barks growing sharper, more insistent, a frantic alarm that forced a terrifying truth into Daniel's mind. This was no accident. This was not a false alarm. Something in that unassuming wheelchair, or clutched in the girl's trembling hands, was screaming danger to his canine partner. And whatever it was, Rex was not going to let it go. Officer Daniel wrapped the leash tighter around his hand, bracing himself. But Rex's strength was immense, a raw power far beyond anything he'd shown in training or on any mission. The shepherd's powerful muscles coiled with pure, unyielding tension, his claws scraping desperately against the polished floor as he fought to move forward, refusing to give a single inch. "Rex, heel!" Daniel's command was sharp, desperate. But Rex was immovable, his entire being a statue of pure, focused intensity, his gaze locked onto the little girl's quivering hands. Every fiber of Daniel's being screamed that something was terribly wrong, horribly wrong. Yet the frightened, innocent face before him didn't fit the profile for the kind of threat his partner was trained to find. She looked so fragile, so broken, and afraid anything but a threat. The crowd instinctively retreated, forming a wide, silent circle of fear and confusion. Phones came out recording the scene as nervous whispers cut through the air. "What is that dog doing? Does she have something? Why is he going crazy like that?" The questions only made Daniel's heart pound harder in his chest. Then Rex barked again, a loud, commanding, urgent sound. It wasn't his warning bark, and it wasn't aggression. This was something else entirely. This was a cry for help. Daniel had been Rex's partner for 5 years. He knew this dog better than he knew himself. Rex was always calm, methodical, almost impossible to rattle. For him to shatter his training like this, it meant he wasn't just reacting to a scent. He was sounding an alarm for a threat, or for someone who couldn't cry out for themselves. The little girl flinched, her small shoulders trembling violently, her lips quivering as if fighting to form words that wouldn't come. She said nothing. Her legs remained completely motionless. The wheelchair itself was askew, a subtle clue that it had been moved in a hurry, or perhaps handled with force. Daniel knelt down, his voice soft and steady. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay? Is anyone with you?" But she gave no response. She only clutched the leather bag tighter, her knuckles turning bone white from the pressure. Rex began to whine now, pacing in tense, agitated circles, his nose twitching wildly. And then just as suddenly he went rigid. Ears pricked, tail straight, his entire body as straight as an arrow. Daniel knew that stance in a heartbeat. It was Rex's life or death alert. A knot of ice formed in his stomach. Okay. Daniel whispered to himself, a cold dread creeping up his spine. "Something is very wrong here." He raised his radio to his mouth. "Dispatch, I need backup at Terminal C now. Possible threat could be a medical. My canine is on high alert. I repeat, high alert." Rex suddenly whipped his head toward the far end of the terminal, a deep growl erupting from his chest as if he sensed a hidden presence. Daniel's eyes followed, searching the crowd, but saw nothing. What was his partner seeing that he couldn't? What was he sensing? And the chilling question remained, was the danger the girl herself, or someone watching her from the shadows? A sharp intake of breath from the little girl, as Rex barked again with more force. Her tiny fingers dug into the worn leather bag in her lap, clutching it to her chest as if it were her only lifeline in a storm of fear. Tears carved silent trails down her cheeks. No sobs, just a quiet, desperate grief that twisted the heart of anyone who saw. A knot formed in Daniel's chest. She was so fragile, utterly defenseless. Her thin blue hospital gown draped loosely on her small frame, with sleeves that swallowed her tiny arms. Her legs, they were utterly still, not even the slightest twitch. They hung lifeless from the wheelchair, toes turned slightly inward, paralyzed. The truth struck Daniel like a physical blow. "Hey there," he murmured, kneeling to meet her gaze. "It's okay. You're not in any trouble. Nobody is going to hurt you. But we need to know if something is wrong. Can you tell me your name?" Only silence answered her lips, trembling with each shallow breath. Her gaze darted to the crowd, to the staring faces, the whispers, the judgment, the fear. She recoiled, trying to sink into her chair and vanish. Her chin quivered as her gaze met Rex's once more, but all fear of the dog was gone. In fact, it was the opposite. A desperate plea, a flash of recognition. As if she wanted him there, as if she needed him. Daniel saw it all, his heart hammered in his chest. "Are you trying to tell me something?" he asked softly. "Did something happen? Is someone hurting you?" The girl swallowed hard, her lips parting as if to form a word, but only a trembling exhale escaped. Her gaze shot to the bag, then to the terminal beyond Daniel, and back to Rex. The sequence felt deliberate, anything but random. It was intentional. She was sending a message, but the words wouldn't come. Was it trauma? Was it pure terror? Or something physical? He couldn't be sure. From the crowd, a woman whispered, "My God, she's absolutely terrified." Another voice added, "Where are her parents?" The same question haunted Daniel's mind. The girl squeezed the bag tighter, her knuckles straining, holding it as if trying to keep something precious from escaping. Beneath oversized brown gloves, her hands shook violently. They were far too large for her. Adult-sized gloves, worn and cracked, that completely hid her tiny fingers from view. Daniel leaned in slightly. "Honey, is someone coming for you? Are you all alone?" Fresh tears welled up, spilling down her cheeks. She didn't speak. She didn't nod yes or shake her head no. Instead, she did something else entirely. It was small, subtle, something anyone else might have missed. She lifted a gloved hand a mere inch and tapped twice on the leather bag. Rex's reaction was immediate, a raw, urgent bark that made Daniel freeze. Her silence wasn't defiance. It was an inability to speak. And whatever she was trying to warn them about was infinitely more terrifying than anyone there had yet realized. Rex's sudden, explosive bark ricocheted through the vast terminal, echoing off the walls like a gunshot. Daniel's head snapped toward the girl's trembling, gloved hands, toward the old leather bag she held against her. The bag she had tapped twice. The one bag Rex had refused to look away from. Daniel's pulse hammered in his chest. "Rex, what's in that bag?" he muttered under his breath. The German shepherd rumbled a low growl, inching forward on stiff legs, nose twitching fast. His entire posture was a blaring, silent alarm. His ears were locked forward, his body coiled, low-tail, rigid. This wasn't the bomb signal. It wasn't the narcotics alert either. It was something entirely different. A signal Daniel had witnessed only 2 times in his long career. The sign for life or death. The passengers recoiled, their fear creating a widening circle. A man whispered, "What's actually inside of it?" "Is it a device?" another muttered. A palpable threat. The anxious whispers spread like wildfire. The little girl clutched the bag to her chest, shaking violently, while her lips trembled. Her frantic eyes darted from Rex to Daniel to the far end of the terminal, terrified of being watched. Daniel knelt, his voice a gentle whisper. "Sweetheart, can you please open the bag? I promise no one's going to take a thing. We just need to be sure that you're safe, all right." She shook her head, not in defiance, but out of sheer terror. A pure, paralyzing fear. Her small hands squeezed the straps even tighter. The worn leather strained beneath her grip. Then Daniel saw it. Something was off. The bag was old and faded in several places, but the zipper was brand new, obviously a recent replacement. Rex sniffed the air sharply, barking once more, commanding Daniel's full attention. "Okay, that settles it." Daniel spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, get bomb squad and medical on standby. We have a possible concealed threat or contraband in a carry-on." A security officer approached cautiously. "Do you want us to take the bag, sir?" Before Daniel could answer, Rex exploded forward, barking fiercely, positioning his body between the girl and the officer, teeth bared. The officer froze instantly. Whoa, okay. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. Rex wasn't protecting them from the bag. He was protecting her. But why? Daniel's mind raced through the terrible possibilities. Drugs, forged documents, a hidden device, or even worse, something dangerous planted inside, without her knowledge. The girl whimpered, her tiny body shaking uncontrollably in the wheelchair. She looked at Rex with pleading eyes, as if begging him not to let them take the bag, as if its contents were a threat. But not a threat to her, but to someone else entirely. A cold dread twisted in Daniel's stomach. "What is it, sweetheart?" he whispered. Rex barked one more time, a sharp, urgent, desperate sound, as if their time was slipping away. A piercing alarm then shrieked through Terminal C, triggered by Daniel's call. Instantly, flashing red lights pulsed across the massive hall as an automated voice echoed from the ceiling. "Attention all passengers. Please remain calm. A security protocol is now in progress. Follow all instructions from airport staff." But calm was the last thing on anyone's mind. Panic erupted through the crowd. Mothers clutched their children close. Travelers deserted their luggage where it stood. Those nearest the scene frantically scrambled away, stumbling over chairs and barriers in their haste to get away from the small girl in the wheelchair and the bag she clung to as if it were her very life. Airport security personnel swarmed the area from every direction, creating a tight perimeter around Daniel, Rex, and the child. Officers held up their hands, shouting, "Everyone stay back! Clear the area immediately!" Their commands were nearly drowned out by the rising tide of panicked questions. "What's in the bag? Could it be a bomb? Is that little girl dangerous?" And the misunderstanding only ignited more terror. He hated seeing them aim their fear at a child who couldn't even speak for herself. She seemed to shrink absolutely, drowning in the wheelchair. She was trembling, a fragile thing under the weight of 100 suspicious eyes, and Rex felt every bit of her fear. The devoted German shepherd moved closer, a living shield between her and the sea of faces, a low growl warning anyone who dared approach. His posture wasn't aggression, it was pure, unwavering protection, as if to guard her very soul from the world's harsh glare. A senior airport official hurried onto the scene. "Officer Carter," he commanded, "give me a sit rep. Why is your K9 indicating a high-level threat?" Daniel's throat went dry. "Sir, I'm not sure yet, but Rex is never wrong. He's locked onto something in that bag. The little girl. She could be in danger herself." The chief's gaze flickered from the quaking child to the panicked crowd. "Lock it down! Evacuate this entire zone now!" In an instant, officers were sealing off the terminal wing. Gates slammed shut. Flights were grounded. A river of passengers was redirected, their journey halted by an unseen threat. Inside the sterile perimeter, the air grew thick with a palpable tension. A bomb technician encased in heavy gear advanced with deliberate slowness, his eyes methodically scanning the wheelchair, the bag, the girl. "Has she said a single word?" he asked, his voice muffled. Daniel shook his head. "She can't. Not one sound." The technician's brow furrowed. "Then we move with extreme caution." The child whimpered, her tiny body curling into itself, as if bracing for an impact only she could see coming. Rex let out another sharp bark. 3 short, urgent blasts of sound. Daniel's blood ran cold. Rex only ever barked that way when a life was hanging by a thread. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. Just as Daniel was about to order the technician forward, a desperate shout sliced through the silence. "Stop! Don't you touch her! That's my niece!" Every head snapped towards the commotion. A man was sprinting past the checkpoint, gasping for breath, his face a mask of sweat and panic. He had on a bulky jacket, sunglasses perched on his head, and a messenger bag slung tightly across his body. His chaotic arrival threw security into overdrive. "Get him!" an officer yelled. 2 guards rushed to intercept, but the man violently shoved past them, stumbling over a rope barrier as he lunged for the girl. The instant he closed within 15 feet, Rex absolutely erupted. The shepherd launched forward with a guttural roar. Fangs exposed his body, a tightly wound coil of pure power. Daniel barely held the leash. "Rex, no!" he yelled. But this wasn't blind aggression. It was the fire of recognition. This man wasn't just a stranger. He was the source of her terror. The girl's reaction confirmed everything. Her eyes widened in sheer horror. Her breathing became a series of short, frantic gasps. Her small hands gripped the leather satchel with impossible strength. And in that moment, a flicker of hope Daniel didn't miss. Her desperate gaze found Rex a silent plea. The man froze, suddenly realizing he'd walked straight into their trap, but desperately tried to conjure a smile as officers slammed him to a stop. I'm her uncle," he sputtered, his hands shooting up in surrender. "Please, she's not well. She can't talk." "This has to be some kind of terrible mistake." Daniel moved between them. "Sir, we asked if she was with anyone. We got no answer." "She has severe anxiety." The man insisted, his words tumbling out too fast. "She gets terrified of new people. I was just getting her medicine." Rex's growl was so deep it vibrated through the floor. The man pointedly avoided looking at the child, but Daniel saw her reaction all too clearly. She cowered deeper into her chair, trying to become invisible. Her hands shook so violently as she clutched the bag, it was a miracle she could hold on. Clutching it to her lap, a desperate shield against the man. Daniel's gaze sharpened. "If you're really her guardian, then what's her name?" The pause stretched just a second too long, a silent confession that chilled Daniel to the bone. Her name is Lily." Daniel's stomach plummeted. The little girl's face was a portrait of betrayal. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks as a soft, broken whimper escaped her lips. Rex erupted in a ferocious bark, straining against his leash. It was clear she wasn't afraid of the uniforms. She wasn't afraid of the dog. She was terrified of him, the man claiming to be her uncle, and the secret he held. Rex sensed it. Daniel saw it. And now the truth hung heavy in the air for everyone to feel. The supposed uncle's voice grew strained, insisting, "She's fine. She's just scared of police, that's all it is." But each of his words was a blow, making the little girl tremble more violently. Her breathing became a series of sharp, ragged gasps. Her small fingers knotted in the leather of the bag, her only anchor in a storm of fear. Rex's low growl rumbled through the terminal, a primal alarm. Daniel knelt down, bringing himself to her level, a calm presence in the chaos. "Sweetheart," he began, his voice a gentle murmur. "Listen to me," he read softly. "You are safe with us now. Nobody is going to hurt you. If something is wrong, if you're trying to tell us something, you can show me. You don't have to speak." Her eyes, heavy with terror, slowly met his. But behind the fear, he saw a flicker of something else. Hope. Daniel gently gestured to the bag. "Is there something in there you need us to see?" She gave no nod, no shake of her head. Instead, she did something that sent an icy wave straight through Daniel's soul. Her small gloved hand rose trembling and she tapped the bag. 1, 2, then a pause, and a final, deliberate third tap. Rex answered instantly, with a sharp bark recognizing the rhythm. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew that pattern. Not from an airport, not with a child, but from a training seminar. Nonverbal distress signals for victims who couldn't speak. It was a tap code. 3 taps. The meaning hit him like a physical blow. "I am in danger." The bomb technician froze. Every officer tensed. Even the onlookers beyond the tape sensed the sudden chilling shift in the atmosphere. Daniel swallowed hard. "Honey, is someone hurting you?" he whispered. Her chin trembled as fresh tears fell. Her hand hovered, then repeated the signal on the bag so faintly it was almost silent. A vibration more than a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Rex exploded in a fury of barks, lunging on his leash toward the so-called uncle. Panic flashed in the man's eyes. "She's just confused. She does that sometimes. She's got a condition." His excuses were clumsy, desperate. Daniel's voice turned to steel. "Sir, step back, now!" Officers closed in their grips firm as the man sputtered in protest. But Daniel's world had narrowed to the little girl. He took a steadying breath. "Sweetheart, if he is the reason you're in danger..." "Can you look at him?" For the first time, she lifted her tear-streaked face and stared right at the man, not with love, not with recognition in her gaze, only pure, gut-wrenching terror. Rex let out a bark so powerful it seemed to shake the entire terminal, and in that instant Daniel understood everything. The signal wasn't about the bag, it was about him, and the secret she carried in that bag was the key to shattering his lies. A decision was made in a heartbeat. "Get her out of here," the airport chief commanded. "Now, away from the crowd and away from him." Two female officers approached with caution, their voices soft. "Honey, we're going to take you somewhere quiet, okay? You'll be safe with us." But the girl's terror only escalated. Her small hands clamped onto the wheelchair's armrests, her knuckles turning white. Her breath hitched, coming in ragged gasps. It wasn't the movement she feared. It was leaving Rex behind. Daniel saw the panic in her eyes. "Rex is coming with us," he stated, his voice unwavering. Rex let out a single sharp bark, sealing the promise. The slightest bit of tension eased from her shoulders as officers began guiding her wheelchair toward the secure doors past the checkpoint. As they moved by, the man who called himself her uncle screamed, his voice raw with rage, as he fought the agents holding him. "You're making a huge mistake. She needs me. She's confused. Just let me talk to her." But his voice alone made her retreat deeper into the chair. The hallway to the private screening rooms was unnervingly silent, dimmer than the rest of the airport, a sterile tunnel cut off from the noise of the terminal. The cold, blank walls seemed to amplify every sound, the whisper, soft squeak of the wheelchair, the click of Rex's nails on the tile, Daniel's measured footsteps. Inside room 3B, the lock on the door clicked shut behind them. Security stood guard outside. Inside it was only Daniel, Rex, the girl, and two female agents. The room was stark, a table, a medical kit, a scanner, and two chairs under the hum of bright, unforgiving lights. She clutched her bag like a lifeline, as if her world would end if she let go. Daniel knelt down beside her again. "Hey, you're safe in here," he said gently. "He can't get near you." At the simple mention of he, fresh tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head, a fragile, trembling motion that said more than any words could. A female officer crouched beside her. "Sweetheart, is that man really your uncle?" Her breath caught in her throat. She froze completely, her gaze fixed on the floor. Tap, tap, tap," though the officer's face paled. "No," Daniel breathed. A low, warning growl rumbled in Rex's chest as he pressed his body firmly against her wheelchair, a guardian. Another agent moved forward. "We need to scan the bag," she said. The girl's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror as she clutched it tighter, shaking uncontrollably. She shook her head over and over, a broken, pleading sound escaping her lips. Daniel raised a calming hand. "Wait, don't touch it yet." He looked deep into the girl's eyes, his voice low and steady. "Honey, is there something dangerous inside? Something that belongs to him?" Her small lips trembled. She lifted her gloved hand. Tap, tap, tap. Rex let out a deep, urgent bark. The air in the room went still. Daniel felt it in his soul. Whatever was in that bag was more than just evidence. It was the answer to a horrifying question. For a long, heavy moment, no one moved. The girl's tiny hand hovered over the leather, shaking with a force that seemed impossible for her small frame. Tears glistened in her eyes, but beneath the fear was a fierce desperation. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his gut. "Sweetheart," he whispered, his voice a promise. "If there's something dangerous in there, it's okay. You can show us. I promise you nothing bad is going to happen to you. You're safe." Rex gently nudged her arm, whining softly, urging her on. The girl drew a shaky, courageous breath. Her fingers began to uncurl slowly, painfully from the handle. She pushed the bag forward by only an inch. Daniel swallowed. That tiny movement was a confession. She needed them to open it, but she was terrified of what it held. Daniel pulled on a pair of gloves. The two female agents took a precautionary step back. Rex stood like a stone statue, tail rigid, ears locked forward, his body taut with instinct. Daniel's hand moved toward the zipper. The girl flinched violently, her hands flying up to cover her ears. Rex leaned hard against her leg, a solid comfort. "Easy," Daniel whispered. "I've got it," he murmured, pulling the zipper. The second the bag gave way, a cascade of documents spilled onto the table. Not toys, not medicine, no personal keepsakes. Just papers, folders, and thick stacks of cash bound in rubber bands. And 6 passports. Each one bore a different name, a different country, a different face. But they all shared the exact same birthday. The little girl's birthday. A chill shot through Daniel's veins. "What is all this?" a female officer breathed, lifting a single passport. Inside was a photo of the girl, aged by years, digitally altered, with a hauntingly realistic precision. The next passport made her a boy, another a tourist from abroad, and the next a frail medical patient. Daniel's stomach churned. These are sophisticated forgeries. Rex let out a sharp bark, pacing anxiously around the table. Daniel plunged his hand deeper into the bag. His gloved hands trembled as he unfolded a sheaf of medical records, hospital forms, insurance claims, and disability certificates. Travel authorizations, every single one bearing a different name, but all of them citing the same condition, paralysis. At the word, the little girl's own legs trembled. Another document slipped free. An airline ticket printed with yet another alias, and beside it a chilling list of destinations. Dozens of cities spanning several countries. The female officer covered her mouth in horror. "Oh my God, they've been using her over and over." Daniel stared at the papers, a cold dread rising in his chest. This wasn't just a collection of forgeries. This was a well-oiled system, a business, a massive organized operation built on one gut-wrenching truth. They were exploiting this little girl, her disability, her very identity, her trauma to fuel a scam worth millions. Daniel slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. She wasn't just a lost child. She was their prisoner, and the man waiting outside was no uncle. Daniel's gaze lifted from the fraudulent papers to the small girl silent in her wheelchair. It wasn't just fear in her eyes. It was defeat, a look forged by years of being treated as property, not a person. He moved toward her, slowly kneeling down so he wouldn't tower over her. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice gentle. "We know the truth now. That man, he isn't your uncle." A shaky breath escaped her lips. Her chin trembled. Tears welled up, spilling down her cheeks with a silent, heartbreaking dignity. She didn't seem surprised. She looked relieved. Daniel pressed on gently. "If he isn't your family, can you tell us your real name? Or can you show us?" The little girl hesitated. Then her small hands moved with a slow tremor, reaching back into that leather bag. Not with fear, but with a quiet purpose. She dug past the false identities, her fingers finding something hidden beneath. A tiny laminated card. It was old, scratched, and folded so many times the edges were soft and peeling. She offered it to Daniel, her fingers still shaking. Daniel carefully unfolded it. His heart plummeted. It was a hospital ID bracelet, faded pink, worn, and impossibly small. The name printed on the band read Emily Dawson, age 6. Not Lily, not Maria, not any of the dozens of aliases in the passports. Her real name was Emily. Daniel looked up from the bracelet to her face. "Emily," he whispered. "This is you, isn't it?" Her eyes instantly flooded with tears. Tap, tap, tap. The quiet confirmation landed like a blow to the gut for every officer in the room. "Dear God," one of them murmured. "She's not traveling," Daniel said, the horrifying realization dawning. "She's being passed from one to the next." He took a ragged breath. Multiple passports, multiple identities across multiple countries. Emily hadn't just been taken once. She was being moved between rings, a pawn in a cruel game. She was flown from city to city, country to country, a pawn used as a patient, a charity case, a disability claim, and a face of sympathy to funnel cash into a vast network of fraud. Insurance scams, medical cons, charity rackets, travel schemes, all built upon the fragile back of one innocent, paralyzed girl. Emily's small hands gripped her sleeves, bracing for a punishment that never came. Daniel's voice grew soft. "Emily, how long have you been with them?" he asked gently. She glanced away, her tiny hands trembling as she held up 2 fingers. 2 years. A knot tightened in Daniel's throat. Taken from her family at just 4 years old. Rex whined low, moving closer to rest his heavy head gently on her lap. Emily flinched from the contact, but then ever so slowly placed a trembling hand on his deep fur. It was the very first sign of comfort she had shown. Daniel's jaw went rigid. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't a petty crime at all. Emily was the centerpiece of one of the largest child exploitation rings he had ever witnessed, and the man outside was merely a single thread. The air in the room grew colder as Daniel began to spread the damning documents across the table. The awful truth assembled itself piece by piece into something more monstrous and organized than he'd ever imagined. Every single paper, every false form, every ID clicked into place, forming the same horrifying picture. A female officer leaned over the table, her voice a shocked whisper. "This goes way beyond identity fraud. This is an entire black market network." Daniel nodded grimly. "And Emily is its unwilling star." He produced another folder from the bag. Inside were printed emails, donation letters, and legal forms. At a quick glance, they all appeared to be completely legitimate. But they were harmless only until he read the foundation names. Not one of them was real. All fake children's charities, phony hospital funds, false emergency causes, all siphoning thousands of dollars with photos and reports of a single paralyzed girl, Emily. The other officer flipped through the pages faster, her own hands now shaking. These criminals collected funds from donors' hospitals, even international aid programs. Her fragile condition was their key, claiming she required life-saving operations and raising funds for surgeries that would never take place. Daniel's stomach churned. They'd built a fortune on her pain. Another document slid across the table. This one struck him like a physical blow. A contract signed by a series of fake guardians with a note at the bottom that read, "Child must remain wheelchair-bound for authenticity." Daniel's jaw locked so hard that it began to ache. "They were forcing her to stay in that chair," he breathed. "Even if she could get better, they wouldn't let her." Rex let out a deep, primal growl, as if he sensed the cold evil in those words. Another document caught his eye. Travel itineraries and flight logs. He scanned the pages quickly. Cities around the world, dates, airports, and names of their handlers. It was never just one man. This was a constant rotation. Each handler would play the part of an uncle, a brother, a guardian, a volunteer. They moved her across nations, presented her as a critical medical case, and then they claimed all expenses. Millions in reimbursements, millions from charities, millions more in fraudulent medical claims, all of it resting on the back of one defenseless child. Emily sat silently in the chair, her eyes distant and hollow, the gaze of a child who had lived through far too many horrors for her age. Her fingers tangled in Rex's fur, clinging to him, like he was the first glimmer of safety she'd known in a lifetime. A shuddering breath escaped Daniel. "This is a trafficking ring." He breathed his words heavy with horror. "Not just for money, but for stealing identities, abusing charities, and medical fraud," the officer whispered. "God, how many other kids have they done this to?" Daniel's hands trembled as he shut the folder. "I don't know," he said, his voice a low, grim promise. "But we are going to find out. For this was no small-time operation. Its tendrils were terrifyingly global. And Emily? She was just the beginning." For what felt like an eternity, a heavy silence blanketed the room, broken only by the low drone of the lights and the steady, reassuring tap of Rex's tail on the floor. Huddled in her wheelchair, Emily's trembling hands clutched fistfuls of Rex's warm fur, her face obscured by tangled strands of brown hair. Daniel lowered himself to her level again, his voice dropping to a gentle whisper. "Emily, I know you've seen things no child should ever have to see, but you are safe now. You're protected. No one can harm you now." Emily's lips parted her breath, catching in a fragile shudder. The loud sobs were gone, replaced by silent tears that streamed down her face, the heartbreaking mark of a child taught that crying invites pain. A female officer stepped closer, her voice warm. "Sweetheart, if you can, if you feel you're okay, can you tell us anything?" Even just one single word. Emily's shoulder began to tremble. Her grip on Rex tightened instinctively. He leaned into her touch, nudging her arm with a gentle, persistent strength. His presence was a living shield around her. Daniel placed a gentle hand on her wheelchair. "Emily, did they tell you not to speak?" Her breath hitched. A tiny jolt shot through her body. Her hand, hidden in an oversized glove, began to rise. Tap, tap, tap. "Yes," Daniel breathed, understanding dawning. "You're telling me the truth. They stole your voice." Emily's chin sank to her chest heaving with ragged, uneven breaths. Her lips quivered, trying to form words that had no sound. Daniel leaned closer, his voice a promise. "Emily, can you try to say something? No one will hurt you. No one will take you. I promise." And for the first time since this nightmare started, Emily's eyes didn't dart to the door or to the bag. She didn't even glance at the officers. Her gaze found Rex. He met it without flinching, steady, calm, and strong. Emily opened her mouth. At first, only silence. A whisper of air. Then slowly, agonizingly, a sound began to form. The faintest, most broken voice Daniel had ever heard. "Help!" The word cracked, mid-syllable, brittle and fragile, like a voice left to rust for ages. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes, but Emily wasn't done. She gathered another small, shuddering breath, forcing it past a terror that had taken root in her soul. "Help! My baby!" Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. "A baby?" he whispered, confused. "Emily, what baby?" Terror flooded her eyes as her trembling finger rose to point. Not at herself, not toward the bag, but straight at the door, at the man who called himself her uncle. Rex exploded in a bark so ferocious it seemed to shake the very walls. Emily had finally spoken, and her whisper exposed a darkness far worse than anyone had ever imagined. The moment Emily pointed to the door, Rex's bark turned into a feral cry, deep, sharp, and full of raw urgency. He lunged for the exit claws, scraping the floor, as Daniel barely managed to hang on to the leash. "Rex, wait!" Daniel hissed, but the shepherd's instincts had taken over. He wasn't following. He was leading the way. Emily's plea echoed in his soul. Asterisk. Help my baby. Was it a code? A real child? The question ignited a firestorm in Daniel's gut. He shot to his feet. "Stay with her," he ordered the officers, his voice low and firm. "Secure this room. No one gets in or out." He threw the door open, and Rex launched down the hallway like a shot. The security team holding the so-called uncle braced as the dog charged. Panic seized the man. He stumbled back as Rex lunged forward, a flash of bared teeth and raw purpose. His deep snarl echoed, seeming to shake the corridor's very walls. Daniel moved in. "Rex, stand down," he commanded. But Rex held his ground. He didn't bite. Instead, he intensely sniffed the man's jacket, then the messenger bag slung across his body. Rex went completely still. Then came 3 sharp barks. Daniel's heart plummeted. "Something's in that bag." The man's face turned a ghostly, horrifying white. It's just my personal effects." "Open it!" Daniel roared. Security ripped the bag from him and tore it open. Inside a burner phone, keys a thick envelope, and a small sealed metal case. Rex let out a low growl, ears pinned back tight. His fur stood on end. Daniel took the container with gloved hands and snapped the latch. Inside lay a gut-wrenching stack of passports, not Emily's. They were for other children, boys and girls, their ages ranging from 4 to 10, their photos taken in sterile medical gowns. Each was labeled with a false disability, each with expertly forged guardianship papers. The sickening reality hit Daniel like a punch to the chest. This man wasn't just a handler. He was a high-level trafficker, moving children through airports, passing them to different guardians. He supplied the fake identities that kept this horrifying global machine running. Daniel stood taller, his resolve hardening to steel. His voice was sharp as glass. "Arrest him. Child trafficking conspiracy, international exploitation." The man's legs buckled beneath him. No, you don't understand. I'm just transport the boss. He's right here in this airport." Rex's growl deepened with menace. Daniel stepped forward, fury burning in his eyes. "Where?" The man's terrified gaze shot toward the terminal's far end. He pointed to a restricted maintenance corridor. "He came to get the girl," he said. "She was worth more now." A deathly chill snaked down Daniel's spine. Emily wasn't just a victim. She was the crown jewel in a global operation worth millions. And the monster running it all was still here. Rex barked, sharp and urgent, already turning toward the corridor. The hunt was on. Rex exploded forward before Daniel had even fully absorbed the chilling confession. The German Shepherd sprinted down the concourse, his claws clicking like frantic heartbeats on the polished floor. Daniel was right behind him. He shouted into his radio, "All units to Maintenance Corridor 7 now. Suspect is on the move. Seal the perimeter." Officers flooded the terminal as emergency shutters slammed down with a deafening crash, locking down every wing of the airport. But the mastermind, the invisible monster behind Emily's pain, was still trapped inside. Rex skidded to a halt at the maintenance door, barking furiously, his tail ramrod straight. His body strained silently, screaming at Daniel. "He's in there right now." Daniel swiped his keycard. The instant the lock clicked, a man burst through the door, tall, clean-shaven in a fluorescent vest. He had the common, harmless face of any other airport employee. He was hiding in plain sight. But the moment his gaze fell on Rex, and then the officers behind Daniel, his mask of normalcy shattered. Pure cold panic contorted his face as he fled down the corridor. "Stop!" Daniel's voice roared, but the man never looked back. Rex surged forward, a blur of explosive speed, as Daniel released the leash. The K9 flew past waiting carts, crates and equipment navigating the chaos with unerring precision. The suspect crashed through a service door, emerging into the baggage area below. Conveyor belts clattered, and the machinery droned a chaotic symphony of escape. Workers scattered as Rex bounded down the metal stairs 2 at a time. "Everybody clear the area!" Daniel screamed, racing after him. The suspect vaulted luggage bins, toppling carts to create a barrier. It was useless. Rex leaped over them effortlessly, his eyes locked on his quarry. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a solemn promise this pursuit was reaching its end. He reached a cargo container, ripping it open. Inside, 3 more children lay still, drugged, and bound, their silence screaming. Emily had been right all along. She was not the only one. The mastermind seized the smallest child, using the boy as a shield. "Don't you come any closer!" he screamed. Rex refused to wait, unleashing a thunderous, guttural snarl. He launched himself, clamping down on the man's arm before he could hurt the boy. The suspect screamed in agony, stumbling back as Rex pulled him to the floor, pinning him with incredible force. Within seconds, officers swarmed the scene. "Suspect down, children secured!" one of them shouted. Daniel rushed to the cargo container as the children blinked, dazed. They were terrified, but they were alive. "You're safe now," he whispered softly. "I promise." Behind him, the mastermind was being cuffed, still screaming as Rex stood guard over him, eyes blazing with righteous fury. The monsters behind this nightmare had finally been brought to justice. And it all began because one small girl had wordlessly pleaded with a dog for help. The airport's chaos slowly dissolved into a quiet, almost reverent calm as emergency lights softened and officers cleared the concourse. The children rescued from that cold container were gently moved to the medical wing, finally safe and warm, and surrounded by professionals who truly cared. Inside the airport's medical center, Emily sat on a cot, swaddled in a soft blanket. Her wheelchair was nearby, though her small frame still trembled with shock for the first time since Daniel had seen her. She didn't look terrified, but free. Rex stood beside her, his powerful tail wagging softly. He had not left her side since the rescue, every so often nudging her small hand with his nose, checking on her in a way that only a trained protector with a devoted heart could. Daniel approached quietly. "Hey, Emily," he whispered. "We got them all. Every single one. They can't ever hurt you again." Her eyes filled with tears, not of terror, but of profound relief. She pulled the thin blanket closer, then extended one small, trembling hand in Rex's direction. The German Shepherd took a step forward. Emily's voice was faint, a mere whisper, yet it was finally steady. "He helped me," she affirmed. Daniel nodded, his own voice thick with emotion. "Yes, he did." Rex leaned in, resting his head gently on the edge of her cot, as Emily began to stroke his fur, with careful strokes, as if she was rediscovering the very feeling of safety. A female officer brought her a small stuffed animal. "This is for you," she said softly, from the airport staff. Emily held the toy close, but her eyes never left Rex. Daniel cleared his throat, his own voice thick with emotion. "Emily, your parents. We found them. They're on their way." For a moment, the little girl froze. Then new tears of relief spilled down her cheeks. Tears of a relief so profound it shattered Daniel's heart. "She hasn't seen them in 2 years," a nurse whispered softly. Emily turned her gaze to Daniel, voice cracking. "Rex, stay." Daniel smiled gently. "He won't go anywhere." Rex wagged his tail as if making the promise himself. Minutes passed in a profound quiet. The tension of the day melted away, replaced by soft breaths and the gentle beeping of machines, and the quiet comfort of being safe. Then Emily leaned forward, placing her small palm on Rex's head. Her voice, still fragile, still quiet, held more strength than Daniel had heard all day. "You're my angel," she breathed into his fur. Rex pressed his forehead against her hand, his eyes soft, body at ease, a silent vow of protection. Daniel swallowed hard. After all she'd been through, those years of a stolen identity, fear and exploitation, Emily finally had what she hadn't in so long. Hope. And it all began with a little girl, a silent signal, and a devoted K9 who refused to give in.